Okay, day two of how a bill becomes a law. All right, just quick review. 6 steps, right? Yesterday we did referral to committee, okay, and every bill, almost every bill is referred to a committee. Where that bill goes to which committee will affect the life of that bill. So if they send it to a committee where it'll be pigeonholed, it dies. If they send it to a committee that they'll actually take it up, put it on the calendar, and start hearings, which is step 2. Okay, so that's where you bring in the public, public officials, ordinary citizens. Talk about the importance of bringing in celebrities to draw attention to these bills. So we go to step 3, which is markup. Okay, and guys, this is really where the real work is done as far as the specifics of a bill. Okay, it happens with markup. That's quite an exciting slide we have there. Yes, very colorful. Yes. So I want you to think of maybe the last essay you wrote for me, or that English teacher that you had when you turned in a paper that maybe your freshman or sophomore year that went through and marked it up, okay, fixed it, or told you what was wrong with it. Now, so if a bill goes to hearings and it's in subcommittee, okay, in the Senate, if the subcommittee approves a bill, it goes to full committee. They'll decide the exact phrasing line by line. In the House, markup takes place in both sub and full committee. Okay. Now, I pulled up a clip. I went back to C-SPAN of a markup session, which, again, these, like hearings, tend to be open to the public. Okay. And what C-SPAN had on there was like, well, I'll just show you. Now, you really got to be interested in this stuff to watch it, okay? Like, this is 2 hours and 36 minutes long. And they're in a room, okay? You got staff members.
With people that we talked to about this bill, and especially with the governors, and that is what happens when the state has fiscal difficulties. And we have 2 answers. Here's the first one. We actually now have 3 answers because of the population adjuster that I just described. But the first that we plan at the subcommittee is the rainy day fund. We allow the states to save money each year and build it up in an account, including interest, and the size of that account could grow as high as 120% of the amount of money they get in any year. They would have total control of that money, would not be part of the federal budget.
So this looks like a hearing, but it's actually a markup session.
It might be helpful for the members of the committee if there was an additional column added to this sheet which showed what the positive and negative is for each state, because.
Okay, so this, I mean, they're doing the real work here, okay? Like, they're hammering out the details of this bill, how much, you know, how they're going to pay for it, how much, you know, it's going to cost. Different rules and regulations. That was the Welfare Reform Act of 1995, okay, which I've talked about in this class before a couple different times. And so, I mean, C-SPAN thought it was important enough to leave that on their website. So this is where the real debate, the genuine debate, or as one way of putting it, is kind of meat.
I understand what Mr. Hoskins is saying about the fact that we might
the
expect
real
less.
crucial decision.
$397 million. Under this proposal, we get 142.
Like, the crucial decisions, the genuine debate, the meat and potatoes of the thing is done in markup. Okay. Specifics, okay, the line by line phrasing. So you got to have lawyers in the room. You've got to have policy experts in the room in order to because you're creating laws that are going to affect maybe hundreds of millions of people. Yeah.
So this is the markup takes place in both the subcommittee will pay for the House? Do they also mark on it in the Senate as well?
So generally in the Senate, markup takes place in the full committee. And I think that's just because of numbers. They don't have as many people in the Senate. So the subcommittees tend to be pretty small, like small groups of senators. So they need more people to have more input on it. So they do that in the full committee. So the subcommittee will look at the bill and say, okay, I think this can move forward. We had some hearings on it. Let's move this forward to the full committee. Okay. And similarly, they'll do the same thing out of the full committee to the floor, to the whole body. They like the bill. They know it can still change. It's not fixed. It's not in stone, even after markup here. But generally, you're pretty close. Okay. But remember, if you've got a committee in the House of, say, 31 members, you still have another 400 plus that have had no say, haven't read this bill, know much about it. So they've got to be informed on it, and they're going to want to put their own 2 cents in. And that's 400 people with their own 2 cents, which can really bog down the process. Okay, so as we move forward to floor consideration, we'll see the rules on how that takes place, because you can't really honestly give 400 people a chance to like change all this. You know, what they're doing in committee. Now they'll have an opportunity to change things, but it's limited. Okay. So like I said, most of these are open to the public. So after they finish working on this bill and get the exact phrasing of what it is, how much it costs, what impact it's going to have on existing laws, all sorts of things, okay? Then the full committee is going to vote. And they're either going to move this forward or it's going to die, okay? Now they can pass this thing, I don't have this in the notes, they can pass it with a positive recommendation like, hey, this is a really good bill, it's needed for the American people, let's do it. You can pass it with no recommendation. Like, here it is, see what you think. You can pass it with a negative recommendation. You can say, hey, we're moving this forward because this is what the president wants, but we don't know if this is really the right thing. Okay, so we'll let the full House, the full Senate look at it, see what they think. Okay, so these are different types of recommendations, but the really important part coming out of this is this right here, the report. Okay, so if you have notes, underline that. Okay, if it's approved, a report is compiled that explains the changes, major arguments to the bill. This is a summary. The report is a summary of the bill. You take something like the Affordable Care Act, it's 2,600 pages long. Yes, they can provide a full copy of those 2,600 pages to every member of Congress. Okay, but who's going to read it? Now, if you're a member of Congress, you could have one of your staff members say, look, you need to read this. Over the weekend, good luck. Enjoy. Let me know what you thought about it. But Ron Estes doesn't have time to sit down over the weekend and read 2,600 pages and understand it. Okay? So this report is vital. Okay, the report helps member make their decision on how they're going to vote. This summary. Okay. You guys know if something's 2,600 pages long, there is a lot of room to put a bunch of stuff in there that you're not even aware of. Okay, and that's going on right now with this infrastructure bill. Okay, so I was reading up on this a little bit last night. Okay, Republicans in the Senate, the House has this $2.3 trillion infrastructure bill. That's Nancy Pelosi. They're going to pass it. Oh, by the way, yesterday in the House of Representatives, they voted to make Washington, D.C. a state. Now, it's going to take 2/3 of the Senate to make D.C. a state. Is that likely to happen with a 50-50 split in the Senate? No. Okay. Many people feel that it's unconstitutional anyway, what the House did yesterday, making DC a state. Like some people think you actually have to do a constitutional amendment, which is even harder to get, okay? Because remember, you got to have 2/3 of both houses to propose an amendment, and 3/4 of the states, 38 states, to ratify the amendment. So really, I don't think DC statehood is going anywhere, even though it did pass the House yesterday, okay? But anyhow, with this infrastructure bill, the House or the Senate came down and said, okay, here's what we're willing to do. The Republicans in the Senate. And they listed, okay, $209 billion for bridges and roads. Certain number of billions of dollars for water treatment facilities. Certain number of billions of dollars for specific infrastructure, not a bunch of other Green New Deal crap. Okay, which is what the 2.3 billion is filled with from the House. Okay, so it's starting to the movement is starting to happen a little bit with that bill, and negotiations are taking place between Republicans and Democrats in both houses. Okay, but this report is vital because most members are not going to read the full text of the bills. They're going to read the report, if that makes sense. And that's what they're going to use to make their decision. Now, as we talked about at the very beginning of this section, the number one factor of how a person's going to vote is their personal beliefs. They're going to look at their constituents, what they want. They're going to look at interest groups, the ones that gave money, helped them get elected. Okay. And then there's the party leadership that tries to push them to vote with Nancy or Chuck or McCarthy or McConnell in the House, okay, or in the Senate. Okay, so this is step 3. Okay, this is where the real work gets done. Then it's got to go to the floor. Okay, so I have pictures of this is the Senate chamber here. Okay, it sits 100 desks. Okay, and it's pretty cool because we've had some really famous senators over the years. So, like, if you're a new senator, like Roger Marshall, he's going to get one of these desks over here on the right because the Republicans sit on the right, the Democrats sit on the left. When you walk in, Republicans over here, Democrats over here. Okay, and so when you get into one of those seats, those desks, you're like, you can find out who sat in that same desk before you. You know, people like Daniel Webster, you know, that wrote Webster's Dictionary. You know what I mean? Famous Americans throughout congressional history that, you know, I'm sitting at the same desk John Adams sat, something like that. Okay. So this is the House chamber, which is bigger. It accommodates 435 people. Okay. And when we talk about going to the floor, we're bringing everybody involved, okay, into this process. Okay, so when we look at floor consideration, the House and the Senate are very different. This is your longest paragraph. This is the most complicated paragraph. Okay, I think what we've done to this point has been pretty simple. Okay, you got a bill, it goes to a committee, they bring people in to talk about it, and then you work out the details of it and markup, and now let's get everybody involved. Okay. So the House and the Senate have standard operating rules. Rules include procedures for how we're going to vote, how it's going to be admitted to the floor, and how business will be conducted. Are any of you all familiar with parliamentary procedure? Parliamentary procedure. Any in 4-H? People 4-H? None 4-H? No? Okay. And this is something we did when I was in school, probably your parents too. We learned a little bit about parliamentary procedure. At the desk up here, there's the presiding officer of the Senate, presiding officer of the House, okay? Let's say we are all senators right here, okay? Everybody's a senator in this room. You're not allowed to talk unless you're recognized by the chair. So you raise your hand, right? If you want to talk. You ever been in a class like that? If you want to say something, you have to raise your hand. Okay? In the Senate or on the House floor, in order to speak, you have to be recognized. Now, you can say, Mr. President, I have a point of order. So you stand up and say that. And they say, the chair will recognize Mr. Ebright from Kansas for a point of order. So I get to say something. Okay? I do not address any of you. I address the chair. Okay? So if I want to say something about McMullen over there, we disagree on this subject. Okay? I don't say, the fine gentleman, Mr. McMullen from Kansas, is really wrong on this issue. Okay? I say that to the chair. I don't say it to you. You know what I mean? So you don't have individuals going back and forth with each other on the floor. This is parliamentary procedure. Okay? That way, that kind of controls the debate. All right? So people aren't screaming at each other. Because there's a lot of them that want to scream at each other. You understand? And so it's not real complicated parliamentary procedure, but you have to be recognized to speak. Okay? And then you're generally given a certain amount of time to speak. Okay? Like you have 1 minute, or you have 3 minutes, or you have 5 minutes. Okay? And then if you have 5 minutes and you have time left over, you only talk for 3 minutes. You can give your time to somebody else. Okay, I yield the remainder of my time to Mrs. White. Okay, so that's how parliamentary procedure works. Okay, so how this is all going to be conducted in the House and Senate are pretty different. Okay, here's the two big things. Two big things. The rules surround how long we're going to debate this, and are we going to allow any changes to the bill? The committee did its work. They've written a bill, they've approved the bill, they've sent it to us. Are we going to allow any changes to it? Now, a change to a bill is an amendment to a bill. Not to be confused with a constitutional amendment that changes the Constitution. An amendment to a bill is a change to a bill, not the Constitution. You with me? So, infrastructure. Here's your infrastructure bill. Okay? Now, once it comes to the floor of the House, they're going to decide, are we going to allow any amendments, additions, changes to this bill? Okay, so let's say Ron Estes said, well, you have this money in for bridges and roads, and Wichita, Kansas has a serious problem at 5 o'clock. On the north interchange, going up 135, interchanging to north 235, K96. It gets really backed up. There's a lot of car accidents there. And I think we need to put in some additional funding for that. So Estes gets an amendment to add $1 billion to help Wichita, Kansas. That's an amendment to the bill. Sometimes these amendments are called earmarks. An earmark, okay? How long are we going to debate this? So if they say, we're going to debate this infrastructure bill for 2 hours on the floor, that means the Republicans get 1 hour, the Democrats get 1 hour, okay? Now, they both have 200 members. over 200 members, Republicans and Democrats. So the leadership is going to pick you get 5 minutes each. Okay? Both parties will choose those people to get to speak to this issue. Okay? Debating it on the floor. Now, most of these speeches, guys, are hot air and nobody's listening. When people read the report from the committee, they're like, I like this bill, I'm going to vote for it. So whatever these speeches are, this debate, most members have already made up their mind how they're going to vote. So it's just grandstanding. It's people getting on the floor and talking and talking and talking. Okay? Now, there have been debates that were important, but generally they're not. Okay? This is the big deal here. The changes or amendments. And here's the thing. In the House and the Senate, the rules on these changes or amendments are very different. Same thing with debate. Very different rules. So let's look at the House rules first. Okay? Strict rules, not allowing amendments or changes to a bill, increase the importance of the committee's work. Because once the bill comes out of committee, it's not going to change. You're not going to allow this stuff. If they open the bill up to amendments or changes, this bill is going to change. So it decreases the importance of the committee's work. Hope that makes sense. Like, here's a working copy. You guys can read it, but you can't change it. Here you go. Or here's a working copy. Add what you think you need to add to it. Take away what you want to take away from it. And then we'll vote on it. Okay? So each change to these bills requires a vote. Oh, I took a picture of this yesterday. Saw this online. There was a vote in the House yesterday. I don't know what this was an amendment to, but this was an amendment on a bill in the Senate. And Senator Ted Cruz added an amendment to the bill that said this: to prohibit federal funding for any institution of higher education that discriminates against Asian Americans in recruitment, applicant review, or admissions. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but Asian Americans are being discriminated against at places like Harvard and Yale because there's so many good Asian students. If they accept them all, the population of their campus is overloaded with Asian people. Like, that's a bad thing, so we don't want that. Okay? And guys, when you're applying to schools, as my daughter is right now, you can look at the population of the student body, right? The demographics of the student body. Okay? And some of the schools Lily's applying to or interested in, like the University of Chicago, has 17% Asian population. Okay? Which is pretty big compared to the population as a whole of Asians in this country, yes? So these schools are discriminating. Here's the vote on this amendment to this bill. 49 Republicans, yay. 48 Democrats, nay. It's a party line vote. 3 didn't vote. Okay? What the heck, you know, I think that sounds like a fair amendment to the bill. That these schools shouldn't be discriminating people on race, right? I mean, that's kind of something I thought we were trying to do in this country. You know, fulfilling the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. I look at that, I'm like, dude, come on, what's up? All right, so it's very political, guys. Ted Cruz introduced the amendment. We're going to vote against it because I don't like Ted Cruz. That's probably one of the reasons. Okay. All right, so let's look at this. Okay, this is the House. We'll start in the House. Now, because there's 435 people, guys, they got to have stricter rules. Okay, because if you give all 435 members an opportunity to change this stuff, it's going to take forever. So when it comes to amendments, the bill will go to the House Rules Committee, and they will say, okay, this bill is open, closed, or modified. Open, they're going to allow members to add amendments that relate to the subject at hand. So the Ron Estes thing, where he wanted to add $1 billion for Wichita for the interchange, that applies to infrastructure. That could happen in the House. Okay? What you couldn't do, guys, in the House, you guys have all heard of the Kansas Cosmosphere? Many of you guys have been to the Kansas Cosmosphere? Okay. Any idea why they would put a space center like that? I mean, it's got some of the best, space artifacts in the world. Okay. Why they would put that in Nowheresville, Kansas? I mean, if you're going to build a space center, wouldn't you build it like in Cape Canaveral where they launched the shuttle, or Houston where they have NASA, right? Why Hutchinson, Kansas? Because, guys, it costs a lot of money to build that and staff it and then bring in all these artifacts. I'll tell you why. Because Kansas used to have a very, very powerful senator named Bob Dole. You guys heard of Bob Dole? No. He's the guy that the VA hospital's named after on Kellogg down the street. You guys know on East Kellogg there's a big veterans hospital. It's named Bob Dole Memorial VA Hospital or something like that. Okay? Very powerful senator. So, guys, in the Senate, say there's an infrastructure bill, Bob Dole, or in the Senate, you could add something like, I want $2 billion to build a rainforest in Iowa. Or $2 billion to build a space center in Hutchinson, Kansas. That has nothing to do with infrastructure. In the House, you can't do that. But in the Senate, woo, they bring home the bacon. They can add whatever they want to these bills that have nothing to do with the bill. But in the House, it has to relate to the subject at hand. Okay, to add things, additional things to it. Okay, closed. Look, here's what the committee did. There's no changes to this bill. We're going to vote on it the way it is. Make sense? Modified, only some parts of the bill may be modified, others will not. Okay, so these rules are strict, not easily changed. Because you got 435 people, man. Yeah, you can't allow too much. Now the Senate is where it gets fun. Because the rules are in the Senate. There are no rules. There's no limit on these two things. There's no limit on debate. There's no limit on the number of changes you can make to an amendment. Okay? Good here? All right, let's go to the Senate. There's Uncle Joe. There he is again. The former Grand Dragon of the West Virginia KKK. Okay, so no time limits on debate. No limit on the number of amendments. Because this is vital to what is going on in Washington and in the Senate as we speak today. Now, since there's no limit, they can set a limit. Okay, Senate standard rules can be set aside with a unanimous consent agreement. In the Senate, what would unanimous be? 100 to 0. If all 100 senators agree not to allow any amendments on this bill, then you can't make any changes to it. If all 100 senators agree that there will be no debate over this bill, or debate will only be 1 hour, then they can set up the rules that way. But if one senator disagrees, then you can have an unlimited amount of debate or amendments. They can tie up the Senate with endless debate and endless amendments. Now, tying up the Senate with endless debate by a minority party, it's called a what? Endless debate tying up the Senate. It's called a what? No? Nobody? Yeah, you know this.
Filibuster?
Yeah, a filibuster. Okay, a filibuster.
He looks completely different.
Oh, I know. Well, he has plugs. Hair plugs. Today. Okay. He's probably got that Botox. Like Nancy. You guys know Botox. See somebody that looks like this? They just got Botox. In a normal year, guys, there's a movie I'd be showing you right about now. It's a classic, black and white, probably the best movie ever made over like government. It's called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You guys seen this? Heard of it? Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Okay, smell that? Extra credit? Since the movie's really old, you can find the movie not on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, but in the Library of Congress. Okay, so there's a website, Library of Congress, to watch this movie. Okay, it's fantastic, even though it's black and white. The main character is played by one of America's greatest actors ever. Clooney wasn't even born yet.
Tom Cruise.
Not born yet. You got to go back. How many guys have ever seen the
Morgan
movie?
Freeman.
You ever seen the movie? You named some pretty good actors there. Now, I'm not a big Clooney fan.
Ronald Reagan.
No, but you're talking the right time period.
Like the Eisenhower.
Not an actor. Now, It's a Wonderful Life. At Christmas, you watch this movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings.
Yeah.
That actor's Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart.
Andre the Giant.
Jimmy Stewart, okay, who, when he made that movie, how many guys know what the movie I'm talking about, It's a Wonderful Life, at Christmas, okay. If you haven't seen this movie at Christmas, you've been deprived as a child, okay. But anyhow, he had just returned from World War II, Jimmy Stewart, who served in World War II, okay, and just returned. And so he, like many of our soldiers, had post-traumatic stress. We just didn't call it that back then. You know what I mean? And so the parts of the movie where he acts like really distraught, depressed, suicidal. He really is going through these emotions in his real life. Okay, he's a wonderful actor. It's a wonderful movie. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Okay, so I will put something up on Canvas today and give you a few days, okay, to take some time, watch this movie, and write a little bit about it, and you'll be eligible for some extra credit, okay? And you'll learn about the filibuster, because it's really, let me give you the plot. What happens if a senator dies? Well, how do we fill that seat? No. In the House, you have a special election. In the Senate, who chooses the new senator? The governor of the state. So in this movie, this guy Jefferson Smith, who's like a Boy Scout leader, okay? He's a youth leader. He's really good in the community. And there's only like 3 months left on this senator's term when he dies. So his family his kids convince him to pick Jefferson Smith to go to Washington. He's like, he loves the country. He's patriotic. He can quote George Washington from memory. He's just that guy. He's like, and so he goes to Washington and he's got an idea for a bill. But this bill contradicts with something that else is going in fishy, and he gets himself in all kinds of trouble in the Senate. And then they try to destroy him. The political machine tries to take him down, and he stands up and fights. Okay, and that's what this movie's about. And you get to kind of see what the swamp is like. Okay, but that's even back in the 19. It's a fictitious movie of something that's taking place in the 1930s. Okay, so I think you'll enjoy it. Watch it with your family. Your parents will like it too. Okay, it'll be a family movie night. Okay. So here it is. Filibusters. Congressional procedure, or you could say senatorial procedure, that allows one or more senators to hold up a vote on a bill by delaying tactics. Okay? So without 100 senators saying we're only going to debate for 1 hour, without unanimous consent, one member can hold up the entire Senate. The longest filibuster in American history by one senator, just over 24 hours. Remember that old guy I showed you, Strom Thurmond, that lived till 100? He filibustered the 1964 Civil Rights Act by himself for just over 24 hours. The only, you have to be recognized, and you have to stand and you have to talk. If you stop talking or take a break, you lose the floor. Now, I talk 5, 6, 7 hours a day sometimes, with little breaks here and there. Can you imagine doing that for 24 hours? There's no bathroom break. Now, if you have 2 senators, I can get the floor, hold it, yield to you. You can talk for 2 hours. I can go take a break, come back, yield the floor back to me, and we can do this all week, or all month, or all year. If you have 41 senators, like the Republican Party that's in the minority right now, well, heck, if you had 41 or 42, you could go forever. Okay? Here's the thing. You can stop a filibuster with 60 votes. There's Jefferson Smith. Okay? So, range from nonstop speaking to offering endless amounts of amendments to a bill. This could last for hours, giving an intense minority, one person, control over the majority. Now, in the movie, it's not historically accurate in this sense. Back in 1917, the rule was that you had to have 67 votes to stop a filibuster, which is called a cloture. In 1975, they changed it to 3/5 or 60 votes. So right now, any piece of legislation that the Democrats put forward in the Senate, there are 50 Republicans. So right now, the Republicans can filibuster any bill like this infrastructure bill, and it won't pass. Okay? So the magic number today is 60 votes. Now, what the Democrats are talking about doing is doing away with the filibuster. Right now, they're talking about doing that. There's 2 brave Democrat senators, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and another, I forget her name, that are opposed to changing this rule in the Senate. Now, real quick, guys, about 8 years ago, Harry Reid, Democrat from Nevada, was the Senate Majority Leader. The most powerful man in the Senate. He's a Democrat, okay? What was happening was Barack Obama was president, okay? And he was nominating federal judges. The president gets to nominate, pick federal judges, yes? Well, the Republicans in the Senate were filibustering all of his nominees, saying, this person's radical, we don't want them on the bench for life. So Harry Reid did what was called, at the time, the nuclear option, okay? Which was, they did away with the filibuster on judicial nominees, on judge votes. So for judges, today, you need 51 votes, not 60. So the other side can't filibuster. You with me? Now, guess what happens? Barack Obama left office, and Donald Trump was elected. Yes? So when Trump got to pick judges, not just federal judges, he got to pick 3 Supreme Court justices. How many votes did the Republicans need to confirm those justices? 51. So what goes around, what Harry Reid did by getting rid of the filibuster for judicial nominees, comes around and bites the Democrats in the butt. You understand? So if they do away with the filibuster, guys, this is going to allow more radical ideas to get through Congress. With the filibuster, you're going to have to need support from at least some of both parties. You understand? You got to have some Republicans say, you know what, this infrastructure bill, we really need it. You need 10 Republicans or 9 Republicans to come along. So you got to compromise. You got to work with the other side. Okay? Doing away with the filibuster could destroy that. We'll talk more about it on Monday. Have a great